So down here we have a visual of everything we were talking about up in the box up here. So this is when A is greater than 0, which means A is positive. The parabola cups up. We learned from up above the vertex is always going to be HK, the opposite of what's in parentheses, comma the K. And the line of symmetry is always the vertical line that splits the parabola in half. All vertical lines are x equals, and you just look at the vertex to get the x. So x equals h is the vertical line. It should really have arrows on both ends too. And then because the parabola cups up, the vertex is the minimum or lowest point on the graph. And we call the minimum value whatever y is in the vertex, because y is how high or how low we are. So y equals whatever that is will always be our minimum value. So if this point was 2, 3, our minimum value would be 3. So it's always the y. So the x is what helps us with the axis of symmetry. The y is what helps us, y coordinate of the vertex is what helps us with max or min. And then the same thing over here with the parabola that cups downward. That means a is greater than or less than 0, which means it's negative. X equals h, whatever the vertex x value is. Now, because the parabola cups downward, it has a maximum point, and the maximum value is whatever y is. So I know it's a little bit confusing with letters, but let's go through this example together and we'll be able to see it put into practice. So the vertex, remember, from the box above is always the opposite of what's in here. And I have 2 questions on this on the final. The opposite of what's in here, so it'd be positive 1, comma, what's outside. Because when we're with the x, we do the opposite. When we're outside, we just write what it is. So that's going to be my vertex. So let's turn to the next page. Let's go ahead and write the equation at the top so that we have it to look at. So we have f of x equals 2 times x minus 1 squared plus 3. And part A was the vertex, so let's write that down. Opposite of that, comma this. That way we don't have to keep turning our paper over and over and looking back at the last problem. So does everyone agree this parabola cups upward? Because the leading coefficient is positive. So we go over to the graph and we plot the point 1, 1, 2, 3. And this is just the mother function. You don't have to plot the mother function, so don't worry about that. And we know that it goes up 2 times faster. So let's go ahead and make our little mini t-table here. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4 is the mother function, but this one goes up 2 times faster. So we have to take each of these and multiply by 2. So our function is still going to start at the vertex, and then we're going to go up to, or the vertex, sorry. Then at 1, because 0 times 2 is 0, at 1, it's going to go up 2, and at 2, it's going to go up 8. So these won't be our actual numbers. They just tell us what to move. Move 0, up 0. Right 1, up 2. Right 2, up 8. And we don't have enough for 8, so we'll just be able to put that. So this is considered our 0, 0, where our vertex is. And this one says go right 1, up 2. So right 1, up 2, place a point. But parabolas are symmetric, so we should also go left 1, up 2. So these aren't the actual points, there are movements. This says from the vertex, go right 1, up 2. And then, of course, go left 1, up 2. Go right 2, up 8. And 8 will be off the graph, so we'll just leave that alone for right now. Then we have the axis of symmetry, excuse me, which is always x equals, and I go up to the vertex and pick the x value. Then I sketch it in. It's always a dotted line, and the reason it's dotted is because it's not actually part of the graph. It's just that imaginary line that cuts the graph in half. And then on the test, I do ask you to label it. So don't write 1. 1 means nothing on a graph. If I say graph 1, that means nothing. You have to say x equals 1 because that's a line. So x equals, because it's a vertical line, and you just pull the x from the vertex. Identify the max or min. Well, this is the lowest point on the graph, because remember, we're not looking at the mother function, so we write minimum. And the minimum value is always the y. So x helps us with the axis of symmetry. Min and max are the y, so I write minimum 3. That means the lowest y on the graph is 3, and you can see that it is. And this is we have 2 of these 10-point questions on our test. So we're also going to add in x-intercepts and y-intercepts. So besides those 2 missing pieces, this is the 10-point question. It has graphing, it has axis of symmetry, vertex, max, min, domain, range, all the things we're doing now, but then we're also going to add in x and y-intercept. So this is a really good one to study, and I think we have 3 examples coming up to study as well. Okay, domain and range. So every parabola goes left forever and right forever if it's a vertical parabola. So I always know the domain of every vertical parabola. And you're probably wondering, why is she calling it a vertical parabola? Well, in the next class, you guys are also going to study the horizontal parabolas. We don't study those. So that's why I say the vertical parabolas. And that's because they go left and right forever. Because remember, domain are the x's. So that means every x will be hit eventually going left, and every x will be hit eventually going right. The range is bottom to top. You always have to name the smallest, lowest value first. So I always tell my 09 students, roll your pencil. So what's the lowest y value? And you can see right there, it's 3, because range are only the y's, remember? And it's an actual point on the graph, so we put the bracket, and then we keep rolling the pencil, and we see that it goes forever upward, so that makes the highest y value infinity. So this is the lowest x, because the graph's just going to keep going left forever. This is the highest x, because the graph's going to keep going right forever. This is the smallest y, and it's an actual point, so we put a bracket, and infinity is the largest y because of the arrows. Okay, ready to try one on our own? Yay, we can hardly wait, Miss Norris. Let's go. So like I said, 2 10-pointers on your test. So this is big money coming up on the test. So identify the vertex, easiest part of the problem. So all we do is say the opposite of this, because it's with the x, we always do opposite, comma, whatever is out back. And we don't do the opposite of that, only what's with the x. So it'll be positive 5, comma, negative 1. So positive 5, negative 1. So there's my vertex. This parabola is going to cup up. I always like to kind of draw a little icon there just to remind myself. Sketch the graph. So I see that there's a number in front. It's 1/2. So when I go to sketch it, I take my mother function, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, and I need to multiply each y by 1/2. So that means when I go to draw this graph, remember the x's never change, so it's still 0, 1, 2. 0 times 1/2 is still 0. 1 times 1/2 is 1/2. 4 times a half, or half of 4 is 2. So that says start at the vertex. So we're going to call this our new 0, 0. And from the vertex, go right 1, up a half. So right 1, up a half. Some students get mixed up and they think they always go back to the 0, 0. Don't do that. This is the movement from the vertex. Right 1, up a half. So then we go left 1, up a half. Otherwise, you're going to have some of your points here and the rest all over here. That's not going to form a parabola. So we always got to go from our new vertex. This says go right 2, up 2 from your new vertex. Left 2, up 2 from your new vertex. And there is our most beautiful little wide, because it's 1/2 in front, parabola. So let's go ahead and draw that. And generally, we always label our vertex. And the reason why is because we use it on all the information coming up. So I'm going to go down here and write 5, -1. So we're going to use it for the range. We're going to use it for the axis of symmetry. We're going to use it for the max or min. So the vertex, most important point on the graph. So make sure you label that. And we determined that it cupped up, remember, because of the positive 1/2. Now we need to draw in the axis of symmetry. So it's always the line that cuts the graph in half, and it goes right through the vertex. It is a vertical line, and it needs arrows on both ends. On the test, I also ask you to label it. So we need to label it. And as I said earlier, it's always x equals, and you just pull the x from the vertex. So x equals 5. But I have so many students on the test that they just write this. And I say, well, 5 isn't anything on a graph. Graph 5, what's 5? It's nothing. You have to write x equal 5 to show that it's that vertical line. So it's always x equals whatever the x of the vertex is. So see, this is pretty easy stuff, huh? I love this chapter. Max or min. So is this the lowest point or the highest point? It's the lowest, right? So we write minimum. And this is why we write the vertex on the graph, because the minimum is always the y value of the vertex. So we say the lowest value on the graph, lowest is y, because y is high or low, is -1. So you can see we use the vertex for the axis, we use the vertex for the max and min, and we're also going to use it for range coming up. Okay, so next we have the domain and range. So remember, domain are the x's. I don't know how many of you came from 09 and how many of you did not, but this was the huge focus in 09 was functions and doing domain and range. So those students should be good. If you didn't have a good background with it in high school, you'll probably have to work extra hard on your homework. Okay, so the x values, because this parabola goes left forever and right forever, every x will be taken care of. Because if I go down here, eventually the parabola is going to widen up to have a value for that x. If I go over here, eventually the parabola is going to widen up to have a value for that x. So every vertical parabola has the same domain. Left forever, right forever. And you always list them left to right, because when you're using interval notation, and we learned this back when we were doing inequalities, the smallest value always has to be listed first, largest last. On the x-axis, the smallest values are left, the largest values are right. The range, we roll our pencil. Now we're looking at the y's and we go bottom to top. So the lowest y value is -1. You can see it right there, and it's an actual point on the graph, so we do a bracket, and the highest y value, boom, the arrows say it goes up forever, so that would be infinity. So before you turn on the next video, I would work the back page, do the best you can on those two